and welcome to this lesson number 8 of the Motion Graphics Beginners class. And today we're gonna talk about animated splines and curves in general. Before we start, can you please confirm me that you can hear me properly? I tweaked the audio a little bit and I would like to know if it's any better than last time. Great stuff. Perfect. I changed the software for streaming, so hopefully it's going to be a bit better. Okay, so first thing, we're gonna see how to enable more primitives. What is a primitive? It's the cube, it's a primitive. I made a tutorial specifically on this subject, but today we're gonna see quickly what are the options. So we have meshes that are usually flat or they are solid, like geometric solid, like cylinder, cone, torus. The cube, it's a mesh. The Suzanne the monkey is a mesh, and then we have multiple things. And then we have curves that are basically just a wireframe support for building other objects. So as today we're gonna talk about animating this kind of object, we're gonna see how to have more options when we start our animation. Do remember, when we import an SVG, it comes in that weird format, which is a curve, and sometimes we convert it from curve to mesh. Sometimes we can keep it as a curve. Today we're gonna see how we can work with the curve. So the simplest curve, it's probably this. Okay, it's let me zoom in and let me see from above. It's just a default curve, and if you go into edit mode, you can see the direction of the curve, and it's basically made by a couple of points, 2 points with different orientation. You can, of course, with the rotate, you can rotate the points, and you can also add more points. So if you go into the last point of the curve, you select the last point, you press E on the keyboard, and you have a new point, and you create this flow. But you can create points also in different ways. For example, you can create curves also in different way. Let's say that you have a plane, which is a mesh, and from this plane we are gonna to select faces, and we hit delete on the keyboard, and we delete only the faces. Now we have this outline here, which is still a geometry, it's a mesh, but we can convert this to something else. So as well as we can convert any curve to mesh, we can convert a mesh to a curve. So here it says convert to a curve from a mesh. That's our case. Done. Now we have this, that it seems a bit different from the other one just because it's straight, but it's actually the same kind of object. It's the same kind of object. Just that interpolation from one point to another, it's different. But you can see the direction here. It's still showing the direction of the points. Okay, just you don't see that because it's straight corners. So, and this is how you can move from one kind of object to another. They are completely different objects. Some of the modifiers don't apply to the curves, and some of the things you can do with the curves cannot be done with the meshes. So you have both tools and you need to learn which one you want to use each single time. And I'm going to show how to add more geometry to this. Of course, you can come with an SVG that it's already elaborated enough, but you may want also to create something directly in Blender. So I'll show you how to create that in here too. To enable additional curves, I would go to Preferences, which will open the Preferences box. And here you only go to Addons. Make sure that these ones are selected. And here you can search for Extra, and it will give you a number of options. So these are all the add-ons that you can edit, you can have. So here is the full list of all the add-ons, are hundreds, and you can also download more, of course. They are like plugins, just Blender calls it add-ons. So here you can type extra, and I have already these extra objects activated for other stuff that I do, but in our case we want to add extra objects, curve, add curve. When you enable an add-on, you click here in the flag, you can also see where it's gonna be, where I can find these new things that are activated. And here it says location, it's in View 3D, which is this main one. It's add, curve, and extra objects. Okay, so I close this, I don't need it anymore. And now I can go to add, curve, and I have a number of things that I didn't have before. Some of them are very intuitive again. Polygon, it's a polygon. Here you have extra options, and you can decide what kind of polygon you want. Let's say trapezoid, for example. And really you have many options to build your objects. Or for example, let's say ellipse. Create an ellipse that it's like a circle, but here you can edit parameter more easily than just scale it. This window here on the left side will open just when you create an object. So if I created this object and then I go away and I do other operation, that window, it's gone. I will have another one relative to the last command I used. So whenever a window is closed, I can recall it with F9 in the keyboard, but I can recall only the last operation I did. So let's do it again. Curve, and let's create this time an ellipse directly. And if I close the window by mistake, and I didn't do any other operation, I can recall it because I'm still creating the geometry. I'm still in that command. If I instead start editing and I go back, it will just offer me the last window I used. Okay, so F9 just to recall the last settings window. This is just for you to know. In case you need it, but ideally you do this by steps. So usually when you create the object, you take care of modifying all the parameter, knowing that it's not gonna go back. Okay, this is kind of a destructive. So this is the generator, and you cannot go back to the generator. There are many things to say about the curves. Right now we just activated a plugin, an add-on, to see many curves. For example, this one, let's say that it's a spiral. You don't see that as a spiral because the two circles are the same. But if you enlarge this, you can see the difference. Now we are in 2D and we can add multiple turns. Let's make the radius smaller, and you can create a spiral, for example, quite easily. Now, this almost all the curves are flat, so they lay on a surface, on a plane. So if I turn here, you can see that they are flat on my plane. So they are perfect to work in 2D, because they will, in 2D you'll see their real shape, while if you're in 3D it's probably a bit harder depending on the curve you're editing. And we can go into the curve specific setting properties. So I'll show the difference. If we have a normal mesh on the side, here on the right I will have this, for example, which is an object data properties, and I have other parameters. I have the material, I have physics, we don't know the physics, we have modifier, but look here while I'll select a curve. So I lose some and I gain something else. In this case, the most important thing you want to know, it's this bit, which is the object data properties, which is specific to curves and lets you build shapes and animations. Also, if you go to check the modifiers, let's check the modifier for a mesh. We have all of this. If you go to the curve, we have much less modifiers, and some that are in a way different, so they react differently. One thing that I want you to learn, because we're gonna use it a lot for doing motion graphics, it's how render this, because at the moment this is just a wireframe, and if I go in my rendered view and I remove anything that is not geometry from the scene, I don't see anything. And these are really just structure. If I zoom in, there's no depth. It keeps being the same width. It's like basically rendered one pixel or a couple of pixels, and it stays the same. Oh, thank you, Computer Killer. I'm not on Facebook, and I will look into it. I have no idea how that works there. I have my channel of Blender tutorial here, so I thought this was the right platform, the platform that I know for this kind of tutorial. But I will take a look. If you want to post any example of page or channel on Facebook that does tutorial, I will certainly have a look at it. Thank you. So I'll go back to this, our spiral, and we're gonna open the data properties, object data properties. The main thing you need to learn it's in the geometry. So I'll close the other one, I don't need it. There are many things, but let's start with the basic, the bevel. I would okay, Computer Killer, I'll contact you after we finish today. Thank you. So the bevel, let's do 0.1, and you will notice that straight away our spiral has become solid, has some kind of depth. We are in 3D software, so what's happened is that if we turn, you can see that it created as a, let's say, a pipe, basically a tube. And this is the first thing you need to learn, how to make basically anything in a pipe shape. It's basically the easier thing you can do. And this resolution, it's relative to the number of segments of this circle, of the section of the pipe. So at the moment we don't care, but of course if you want to less, having something simpler, you have to reduce. The minimum it's a square, but you can have, for example, hexagon and so on with any number until you have something that is very similar to a good circle. Let's say 16, you can really not see anymore what's going on. Go back here to 6. Another thing, let's remove completely the bevel. And another thing you can learn, it's about extrude. The extrusion will basically build as it was a tape. Looking from the side, it's a tape. Looking from the top, you won't see any difference. But you can, first of all, you may need it in this way, but you can combine the extrusion with the bevel, and you will have something completely different. Let's say the bevel was this, and then extrusion, and then you have something similar. I can go with material preview, probably it's a bit better. Also, let me assign a default material that is not that white. It's really bothering me. Okay. So these are the main thing, and this of course can all be animated. That means that you can animate the size, for example. Let's remove the extrusion. You can animate the size of this. And let me also change the environment so you can see that with a different light to have a better idea of the shape we are creating. Or also you can animate, for example, the other parameter. And let me put back the other environment so you can see again the shape of it. Okay. And everything is still based on that curve. That means that I can go back to the curve, I can select a few of them, and I can move them, let's say up. Oh wait, before moving up, I will go into and I will have the pipe, and I'll show you that I can pick one vertex and move it, and I'm moving the whole thing, for example. Also, I can move it that as I show you another time with proportional editing. So select this, and when I press G, the circle will define how many of the object I'm moving, how much is the influence of my movements. With the scrolling wheel of the mouse, you can define how deep is the influence of what you're doing. If it's too large, it will basically affect the whole geometry, and everything will always keep the same profile, this kind of pipe profile. And the same works in 3D, so if I move it down, it will do exactly the same. One cool thing that you can do, and that we will see to check how it works, it's certainly animate the creation of this pipe. So let's go something this size, for example, and we are in the top. So imagine this as a 2D views. If you don't want the shading, of course you can remove it from the material. We've seen this already in the previous lesson. You can have a completely flat Material, I'll show you that again, just using an RGB. So I'll pick the same color and apply that there, and now I have completely flat image. Doesn't matter if you're in a 3D, in 2D, it's just going to look this color. Okay, now we have a completely 2D visualization. Let me go into the timeline now, and then select the curve again. We go into the object data, and then we have a bevel start and a bevel end. So let's just increase this, or let's just reduce this. So here it's quite easy to understand what's going on. You have a curve, and it's going to be beveled given the start and the end of the curve. Okay, and this is the start. So in theory, I can animate. Without theory, I can animate. So I can insert here a keyframe from nothing. Let's go from nothing. And then I can say that at the end of my animation, it's going to be completely formed. But I also want that after some of it is created, here, let's say here, I add the keyframe in bevel start, and by the end, this will be like this. And now let's play the animation. And this can be used for many different purposes. For example, I use it to animate the connection between a computer and a cloud. That's exactly how you would animate. So you have a start, and at the end you have a spline or a curve that's connecting the two. Is not visible until you activate the bevel and you make it move, or you make it basically animate the start and the end of the bevel. Let me put back the other shader, so the 3D one. Let me go back to the timeline, and you notice that it starts very slowly. And you don't forget, you can change this behavior into the graph editor. You can select all with A, you can select all with A, and then you can change the interpolation mode to linear. It's not selecting everything. Interpolation mode to linear. Okay, now it's working. And then if I go into the timeline, I should see a more linear animation. There's no acceleration, it's constant, the speed. And if we tilt the scene, you can clearly see what's going on. And this is a very fast way to create something very dynamic, because you have something that goes into a direction and the other one that basically cancel or delete the action you're doing. Okay, I think this is clear. We can create a similar. Let me reactivate the overlay. We can create something similar with different curves, so it gets a bit clearer. For example, okay, with something more complex. A torus knot. We have many. Some of them are quite intricate. That's a DNA style. Basket, that's quite complex probably for our example. Flower mesh, and let's make it smaller. Okay, let's make something similar. It should work anyway. So each object you add has different parameter. You want to play with them until you get something that you like, unless you know them all by heart, but there are many, so it's better to have an idea of what you're doing while you're doing. As you can see, some of them can output Bezier, NURBS, Poly. We need Bezier to do this kind of an animation, so just keep it to Bezier. Poly, it's basically a geometry mesh. So we have our curve here, that it's very, very complex, but doesn't matter how complex it is, it works exactly in the same way. And sometimes this doesn't work, and the reason why it doesn't work, it's because it's cyclic. There's no start and end. It's like continuous. It's like a circle. So we want to remove cyclic. Now you can see there is a hole here. And also show how it's been designed. So we'll do exactly the same. We remove everything. We add the keyframe here. Let's say keyframe halfway through. Sorry, replace keyframe here. Okay, now it's creating, and then while it's almost, well, while it's something like here, I would like to start deleting that part and to finish after another. Okay. And now it's here what's going to happen. Okay, hope it's clear till this moment. The cool thing of working with this is that you can work at the animation, and then if you're not happy with the shape, you can still change the shape because it's non-destructive. We're using, usually when you use the right side, it's non-destructive. Everything on the left side is destructive. That's the general, it's the rule of thumb. Also means that you can still change, as I was saying, the shape. Of course, you can change the material of everything, but you can also go in 3D, for example. I keep clicking here because I enable and disable the overlay. It's like a preview without all the helpers in the scene. So let's say that we select the center now. I'll go from the top. Oops, no, from the top view. We select the center, this complex center of vertices, and then I'll move this down. I just decrease the influence of what I'm doing and then move them down. And the animation is going to work exactly in the same way. So it doesn't really matter what's happened in the shape, because the bevel will always follow the direction of the shape. And the direction that can be inverted if you want, of course, but it's defined and it's visualized given the direction of these arrows. Of course, this is quite a complex shape, But when you have something simple, it's much easier to understand what's going on. For example, you have an arc. This one has not even those kind of visualization because it's very, very simple. But they are there. So if we now this is not even full. This is a complex shape. We don't care about this, but just to be clear, you can change the type of bevel. Let's say the type of bevel, and this is 2D, it's not 3D. It's half. You want that full. So there's more to it, of course, but at the moment we just need something simple that explain to you how to make this 3D or depth or field lines animated. Okay, so you may want to experiment with many, but at the moment I just want something simple to play with. For example, we can go with the polygon, we can go with the hexagon that we know very well. We can remove cyclic from here, or actually what you want, it's having the last one that goes here, but it doesn't touch the other vertex, so it's not connected. So we select this one. I must clarify, this is the shape, the real shape. When I hit tab and I see in edit mode, I also see the handle that basically can be moved around and without proportional editing. If they are moved around, we'll change the segment from a straight line to a curve. Okay, so the whole thing is called a curve or a spline, but if you move the vertex, it will keep the position. If you move the handle, it will give you some more editing. But at the moment, we are not gonna edit anything really in Blender. Don't forget that the shapes will come possibly from Gravit. So here is just to see how to do it, something quickly without going back to Gravit. In theory, you can do everything with Blender, but Gravit, it's easier to do 2D shapes. So if we select one vertex and we press E, we are creating another one, and we want to put the other one exactly in this position, in the position of the other vertex. So now we have two there, but this lets us, with adding bevel, having this kind of, first of all, it's 3D, and it's going to be full, this kind of geometry. Without this segment, I would have had here a hole. So if you want to create something that basically it's tracing your shape, you need all the original vertices, but without being connected, because it needs to know where it starts and where to end. Of course, now it's not precise. I just made it by hand. You just really want to get it right, and this is not even right at the moment, but you got the point. You just need to basically go all around the shape you need. You can also have 3D shapes, 3D curves that are very complex. Let's say that you have let's go with the torus, for example, and we can select all the faces. We hit delete and we remove only faces, so we got the wireframe of this torus, which is quite complex. We can still convert it to curves. Now we have curves. They are cyclic. We remove the cyclic thing And now we can create a solid wireframe, because don't forget this doesn't exist yet, it's just a structure. So with Bevel we can create this structure, and it works exactly in the same way. So I can have this to be created a piece at a time. And also I want to do it, let's go with spline, and this makes the animation based on the spline geometry. Otherwise it's less linear, but you may want to play. Sometimes you have weird acceleration and you want to try to change the type of animation. So let me remove this. Okay, this is something else. I doubt that we will use this unless you want to use it as an effect to build a logo or to build a cloud. I don't know. Probably you are not gonna use this effect, but it's important you know how to do it. Also, of course, you can still increase the size of this. Again, there's a lot that can be done, but let's see a very simple and practical example. Should we import probably something? So we'll see the whole procedure. Let me see. Okay. Let's create a couple of objects. Okay, let's create a simple cloud. Not even full, I just want let's create a simple full cloud because it's important to check a few things. And then we create a database. I want an icon for the database or storage. Yeah, something classic. So we are in 2D. And I want to animate the connection from this to the cloud. So I can export it from here, for example, and these two. Then exported the first one, exported the second one. Let's see how they come up in here. Now I just remove the browser, come back here, and let's import. Okay, we have the first one here and our cloud here. So we keep staying in a 2D environment, so we can animate this in 2D without any problem. Of course, always remember to name them. They are already in 2 different groups. This cloud. We actually don't need this collection, so we can take out our object and remove these 2 collections, cloud, and this is DB. So before doing anything really, we are not gonna do any 3D work, any material editing. We'll just work from a 2D perspective. I want to create a straight line connection animated from in one direction. So the easiest way to do it, to be fair, it's probably yeah, let's create something with a vert. So I'll add a vert. The vert is added here. It's just a vertex. Let me move the vertex. Where is my vertex? Okay, the vertex is here. I'm gonna move it here, just up. So epsilon y. Okay, now the vertex is here and it's in between. And actually I would like to have it here down, so I'll just move it down here. And then I hit edit. I select the vertex, which is only one, so as the origin is in the same point. I press E and I'm extruding now. I also press Ctrl so it goes straight and with a snap. And now I have this object, which is a mesh. You see the icon is different for curves and meshes. And now I can convert this to a curve. So I'll go to Object, Convert, Curve from Mesh. Now this one, it's a curve, and I can bevel it. That's a bit too much because of the scale of everything else. So actually, let's scale everything a lot. Like a lot. And then I move it back here. And now I can probably, okay. Once you scale objects and you need to operate with modifiers, the best thing you can do is apply the scale of the object to 1. Because right now it's scaled 12 times, that means that all the parameters are scaled, it's confusing. So one thing you want to do is apply or Control A, and in this case it's gonna be scale. And look at the right, when I press apply scale, the scale will go back to 1. And now it should be easier to work with this parameter too. Hello John, how are you? So let's bring it down. Now I have a connection. If you want to bring the connection on the back of the object, of course you need to bring the object on the back. One way to do it, remember that the depth in this case is the Z, so you want to select the object and move it on the Z, not up, down, okay? And if you go in 3D, you can see what you did. It's just on the back of it. If you want no shading, as usual, you need to change the shader. Here you can probably change it from principal to I cannot do it from here. You need the shader editor to do it because it's an input node. So it's RGB, and now it becomes completely flat. Now you have a completely 2D looking object. And then we go back to the timeline. And then we go into the spline data. We don't need any of this. We already create our bevel, which gives the thickness of the connection. And one will define the end, one the start. So let's start with this. This depends on the orientation. In our case, let's flip this so it's clear. R, I just change the rotation, and then I'll move it up again. Okay, so in the beginning it's like this. Then we are here, I want this to be there. So insert new keyframe. And then once it's almost reached there, I want to start to disappear until it's here, where it's going to be completely gone. Insert keyframe, and now the animation should show this. Okay, I think it's pretty clear. And let me remove everything else so you can see just the animation. Also will make it as a loop, I would say, so only set 70 frames, and now I let it go. Now this can be converted in 3D because we are in an environment that it's 3D. And the first thing I would do is probably convert the object in 3D, but we are not, we don't have to do it. This one is already motion graphics. Okay, this is basically a easy 2D motion graphic that you can achieve. So everything that we'll do from this point on is just refinement, it's changing style, it's adding animation tools, but this one could already be a result. It's animated and it lets you refine that if you want. Number of things we can do to change the look of it. Of course, let's select our spline. Let's go back to a 3D kind of look, shade. So I don't know if you can see here, there is some shading to it. And also I want to move a little bit. Let's go. Let's say that we flip all of this vertically. So X, so I hit X on the keyboard, I hit R then to rotate, then X to decide which axis, and then I typed 90, which is 90 degrees, and that's the fastest way to rotate an object. And then if you go from the front, roughly from the front, you will have the same animation, just our connection now it's a bit more 3D. Can change the color to something more visible that it's in 3D, and probably we can make it shiny so you can also see some kind of reflection in it. Then we can go into the cloud. We start giving some depth to the cloud. The cloud, it's at the moment a curve, and while I show you earlier that you can use Solidify that works on curve and geometry, on curve you can use, as I show you, different things. For example, you can use the bevel, but in this case it will give you some, let's say too many curves, but again depends on the style you want to achieve. If we go very low, it may work. Also, if you don't want this kind of chubby look on the side, you can decrease the resolution and have it more flat. Okay, now you have a flat but a curve but with some depth, and then you can increase the extrusion so that the curve will act, the bevel will act just for the edges. You can even remove altogether the bevel and you have just some depth to the cloud. Then you want to make sure that once you are in 3D, actually it doesn't matter if this goes on the back, it should probably go into the center. It's up to you what you want to achieve with animation, but I would say that this should go actually into the cloud. Hi John, do you have actually I have Patreon, but I barely set it up. There's nothing in it, so you're not gonna get anything special from Patreon at the moment from me. But I'm open to suggestions if you have. Why are you asking exactly that? Would you like to be a Patreon of my classes, or so let's go on. And I still think the connection is a bit too thick, and now that we're in 3D it's really noticeable. So let's reduce this so it goes straight inside the cloud. And this brown color, really I don't like it. Let's create something, let's call it cloud material, and let's make it some nice cyan. Again, the material can be whatever you like. Don't forget that you can enable metallic to have this kind of shiny, cool reflections. And maybe the connection should go metallic. Now I'm thinking on it. So let's make everything metallic. That looks certainly a bit better. Now this icon, okay, let's go from the front so we can see what's doing. It's already working, but you may want to give some 3D depth to this icon. This icon has been designed with some kind of rotation, so it's not going to be as good if we just add some bevel or extrusion as the cloud. But I'll show you what I mean. It's easier. So if we just extrude it a little bit, this is what's gonna happen. It will lose completely the real shape, and mainly because, as I said, it's been designed as it was already at an angle. But this is a kind of situation where I would just recreate the same in 3D. And this is gonna be the last bit for today, or probably not. There was gonna be something else too. Thank you, John. Thank you so much. Let's recreate this database storage kind of stack in 3D. It's very, very easy. Cylinder is gonna be up down there. We don't really need the cylinder that big. Let's scale it. Let's say something like that. Probably a bit bigger. Then I'll move it so it's in the same position and I can kind of see what I'm doing. Okay, so also I want to bring it as close as possible in the front. And I want to create the first of these stacks. Let's say I will create the top one, so it's probably easier. I will just make it now shorter. Yeah, let's see if from the front it makes any sense. Yeah, it does. Probably a bit less too. And then I'm gonna show you, well, first of all, I don't want this shading on the side. I don't want this flat shading on the side. If I click shade smooth, everything will be weird. I need to go, don't forget here, normals, and say auto smooth. And now I have only the sides like this. After that, I can show you a new modifier, which is called the array modifier. And it starts copying the object number of times in a direction. let's say we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So we need 3 copies, 4 copies in total. And I want this to go down, not on the side. So here it says relative offset 1, that means the length of the whole thing. It's not in the direction, it's in the Z direction. And it's not up, it's down. So I need to add a minus in front, but also need the space. There is a space between all of the disks. So let's start with 1.1 or 1.2 maybe, and then we have our object. I will just discard this, which doesn't make any sense anymore. I'll bring this in position. And now I have some sort of stacked storage symbol. Let me also, I think that they can go a bit larger like this. Okay, hope it's making sense till this moment. I'm going to do something more. First of all, let's give some cool shader to the hard drive storage kind of thing too. We'll call it dB. That's the classic dB thing. It's gonna be blue. It's gonna be rough. Also, we want to add some, I don't like this sharpness, it's way too sharp, so we can add some bevel. We are working with geometry now, so we moved from splines, curves to geometry. We can smoothen a little bit these hard edges in many ways. One easy way is to add the bevel here, and the bevel needs to be added to the first copy, not to the array. So I'll move the bevel before everything else. I'll go to width, and I want a couple of segments. And I click on angle here. And probably is doing weird thing because I forgot to apply the scale. So my scale is now 0.5, so I want to do exactly what I did before. Apply scale. Okay, now the bevel is too strong, but I can go back here and I can reduce it. Now I have some smoother geometry here on the top. Okay. Now it can be seen in 2D like this. It can be seen in 2.5 if you want to call it like this, where you can see some angle here. And don't forget, you can animate the camera around, as you already seen in another tutorial. Before we go, and we are really at the end of this, let me save this file. A moment. Let's call it db2 cloud. Before we go, let's spice up a little bit this connection, because sometimes you have multiple objects, and probably that's what I can do. I can add another hard drive, which I didn't name it, so let's call it db. Let's add another db here, which I want to connect in the same cloud and have the same kind of animation. I could copy this, for example. Yeah, I think I can do it. Which we'll call it connection. So Shift D and then X, so it's moving horizontally, and I will have this, which is not enough, but I can still edit this curve. So I'll go into edit point. You can even see the direction of the curve. Select the top vertex, I'll move it down a little bit, and then I'll press E, X, I move it on the side, and then I press E again, and I move up with Z, and now I have this too. So you can have multiple objects in multiple places and start connecting them, showing some kind of link between abstract icons. As this motion graphic course, it's aimed to build a specific look of animated infographics. This is very important. Animating the connections, it's very much important. And you can keep refining this. Of course, you can have different colors, different shapes. And for example, if you go here, something else you can do, it's changing the, let's say that this one is not in line with that, but it's on the back. Well, at this point, you can, I would pick these two points, and then I will move them back too. But you can decide to move anything in the animation. So this will show something coming from the back. You have to decide when you start what is gonna be the angle. Exactly as when you do films, you want to know the framing, so you only build the things you need and you only place them where you need them. Because if you're going to 2D now, there's no difference having this on the back, because in 2D there's no orthographic 2V projection, there's no perspective that gives you the idea of the size. So having this where I put it now or where it was before doesn't make any sense. But if you want to show, for example, let's say that you have a camera, let's add the camera to the scene, and lock camera view, and let's go here, and let's say that you have, let me zoom the frame in, and let's say that you have you're using a wide angle, and I zoom in, there's a lot of difference between this one and the back one in size. I can do it even more. Let's go with a very okay, so I hope it's all making sense till this moment, and this can be combined with of course backgrounds that we've seen the other time. You can use HDRI, you can use text in it. Next lesson will be actually about text, how to you already know how to import text from outside, but you can also work with text inside Blender directly, and also you can use text as a curve, because text it's actually a curve for Blender. So that means that you can animate the text, you can do same things that we have seen with other shapes too. So guys, do you have any questions, or it's all clear for today? Can you still hear me? There is a worrying silence. Okay guys, thank you so much. We are gonna have a new stream next week, possibly Monday at the same time, which is around 3 p.m. London time. And thank you so much for today. Stay safe and ciao.